Toy Chat is not a children's channel. This video is intended for adult gift givers and collectors. Hey guys, welcome to Toy Chat. This is Max.
And Sang.
And this is another episode of Collector's Corner, our podcast where we discuss hot topics in the doll and toy industry centered on some of our favorite brands. And of course, you know, right now it's Barbie's world. We are just living in it. We are neck deep in the summer of Barbie. The Barbie movie is officially in theaters. I don't know if I can say everywhere. I know it's rolling out internationally, but it's been out in the United States for a little while, and we have seen it. And this episode is going to be essentially our discussion and review of the Barbie movie. You know, we did previously already have a discussion about the Barbie movie dolls, so go check that out if you want to know our thoughts on those. This conversation is going to be specifically about the movie. The way we're going to kind of structure this is you don't need to click away if you haven't seen the movie yet. We're going to have a completely spoiler-free section at the beginning where we're going to kind of give a brief summary of everything, you know, who the movie is for, so on and so forth. We'll address, you know, some of the theater exclusive merch, but a majority of this conversation is going to end up being about spoilers. But don't worry, we will give a very clear and firm spoiler warning before we jump into that. Of course, the Barbie movie is a major motion picture centered around Mattel's most, you know, famous and iconic doll brand. It is starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. It's directed by Oscar-nominated director Greta Gerwig, who has in the past directed, you know, critically acclaimed movies like Lady Bird and Little Women, you know, which were great, which, you know, kind of off the bat sets the tone, you know, kind of for the type of movie it is. Essentially, you know, what the Barbie movie is about, and again, we're going to be only talking about things right now that are, you know, were shown in trailers. The movie opens in the world of Barbie Land that is, you know, a pink utopian paradise for the Barbies. Of course, very based on the actual dolls. You know, everything is pink and gorgeous and perfect. Essentially, what happens throughout the story is Barbie, or quote unquote, you know, there's many Barbies and many Kens, you know, of course, but the main Barbie, who is helmed as quote unquote stereotypical Barbie in the film, ends up experiencing a series of unusual things. Like she notices her arched feet go flat, and then, you know, she falls from her dream house instead of floating down from it like she usually does. These little things start happening that kind of, you know, poke holes in the euphoria and magic of Barbie Land. So she ends up speaking with quote unquote weird Barbie, you know, a Barbie that's been played with too hard, played by Kate McKinnon, who ends up telling her that, you know, she needs to find out essentially the root of, you know, the root cause of this problem and venture to the real world, basically, you know, the human world. Crazy things ensue from there. A question that people have had going into it before learning too much about it is, you know, who is this movie for? If you're not aware off the bat, the movie is rated PG-13. I think ultimately any person or parent will need to approach it pretty much the same way they would any other PG-13 rated film. I think for anyone out there, I know there's been certain people and outlets, you know, saying that they feel like it was a bait and switch or that they weren't aware that this movie was PG-13. I feel like those people have not been paying attention, because from the very first moment of the very first teasers and reveals of this film, it was clear to me that it was not for very young children. The very first teaser had a really suggestive joke with, you know, the beach off banter. The very first reveal of Ryan Gosling's Ken was obviously very, like, campy sexualized.
I think the jokes for an average kid might just go over their head. I don't think there's anything like super, you know, risque or sexualized about like just the plot. I think it's just some of the conversations and jokes might just go over their heads.
Yeah, I mean, of course, as with, you know, really any piece of media, you know, every every child is different and has a different maturity level. I would say from my perspective, there is definitely suggestive humor. And I would say also too, it's just the themes and messaging of the movie I think is more so for adults. So I wouldn't say the movie is for very young kids. It's not something that I think the average person could, would be taking their 6-year-old to, expecting a really cutesy fantasy story about like Playline Barbie.
To me, like, this film kind of has the same kind of humor as like Shrek. Like there's certain aspect of it is like it is mature, but I feel like a kid could watch it.
Oh, but definitely. I would say if your kid is over like 10, I mean, again, obviously, it depends on the maturity of your kid. But I think absolutely, like slightly older kids and stuff like that, I think would get a lot of enjoyment out of the film. Of course, but I think ultimately I would say that the main target demo of this movie is more so adults. And I think that's one of the things that was actually really exciting about it, coming at it from like, an adult collector perspective, because of course we are adult doll and toy collectors. It's a film that I don't think we ever imagined we would receive, because it's a very meta, self-referential, self-aware, kind of edgy, twist on what is ordinarily marketed as like a child's collectible that of course we as adults, are familiar with and, are in that collecting world. So I think adult collectors definitely should absolutely check it out. Some of the deeper intricacies here we'll get a little more into in the spoiler section, but I would say, there's some people I feel like who might be saying things like, or having a mindset of like, oh, the movie's not necessarily for everyone. I mean, it's clearly for a lot of people because it's performing incredibly well. It's like breaking box office records. I think it's like the biggest opening for a female director or something like that, which is incredible, which is amazing. Greta Gerwig obviously has a great track record. In terms of being accessible, I think it would be accessible to a lot of people. I think you got to kind of strap yourself in for some heavy camp. You have to like be down with the camp. You gotta check your toxic masculinity at the door. Of course the movie does very much, center around gender roles and gender discussions. But I think something to be very aware of is that's not the entirety of the movie. I think, the movie's messaging is, I think there's much more to it than just that. I think there's really a broader message about just being a human and, finding purpose and identity and satisfaction in your life.
As male viewers, I think we don't have the same life experiences as some of the people, like the message of the movie or some of the message of the film. But I think if you have empathy and you can relate to like the broader themes of the film.
Yeah, definitely. A major highlight of the movie, I definitely have to say, in this completely AI and CG drenched world it feels like we're living in nowadays, it's really nice to see a movie make use of so many genuine sets and practical effects. Obviously the set design is incredible, visually gorgeous. It's really amazing what they've built. And even the scene, that's shown in the trailers of Barbie and Ken traveling from Barbie lands to the real world, that's actual like practical effects and a set. I saw a behind the scenes of that on YouTube and it's really cool and it looks visually gorgeous. If you're at all interested, by the way, in the Barbie movie exclusive merch, and of course as collectors many of us will be, we did end up finding out there's like a couple different exclusives across different theaters. We had went to AMC specifically and they offered a cute Barbie car, which when I bought it, they told me that they had to sell it as like a bundle, basically with a large popcorn and the perfect day Barbie doll, which I did not own yet. So I was like, all right, I wasn't initially like planning on buying this, but sure. And the car. And the total for that was something in the ballpark of like $65 or $70. The thing that was a little frustrating is they told me I had to buy it as that bundle, but the car ended up releasing online just by itself later. And it was
for
like,
how much?
It's like $25 or something like that.
Okay.
Jumping in for a quick edit. Nope, I got that wrong. It was $34.99 by itself.
Well, I guess, okay, so it's
Yeah.
$25 for the doll, $25 for the car. So the popcorn was like
$30.
$20.
You know what? That's about how much concessions cost
Yes.
nowadays. Something I will say, if you're trying to look into getting that, a lot of people have already shared this online. The car is very cute. I think, you know, the fact that we missed out on the 4-seater Mattel Creations, you know, collectible one, it's a decent, more affordable alternative. You know, it's really cute. It is obviously, it's made of a little lower grade of a material, and so it's like lighter and cheaper. And it's more of like a neon color as opposed to the actual collectible ones. Barbie herself does fit in it technically, but it's a snug fit. So it's not going to be the same aesthetic as, you know, the other ones. Also, I've heard people say that the steering wheel is really fragile, so be careful. And the wheels do actually spin, so that's cute. But
I thought it was going to be like a popcorn bucket where you supposed to fill it with popcorn. But this is actually like a toy car.
There were people who were like treating it like a popcorn bucket, or there's like, oh, you can put popcorn in it. I'm like, I have no desire to put popcorn.
No,
in this. I'm like, for one, you can't fit that much popcorn in it. It's like, it's not practical, and I don't think collectors.
You like really have to dig your hand into it. Like
it's a collectible car. It's that's what it should be treated as. There's other products as well. They're exclusive to other theaters. There was one in particular that had pointed out that like we really were hoping to get. It's a popcorn container that's shaped like a tall Barbie box.
Yeah.
And it's really cute. And it would be great for like a doll, you know, photography prop. But unfortunately the exclusivity of that has been a little weird. I initially found information online saying that it was like a Thailand exclusive, that people in the US couldn't access it, but just very recently, Regal Theaters released it on their website for like $19.99, something like that, but it's a pre-order that doesn't ship until November, so that's kind of wild.
I guess maybe they heard collectors wanting it. Maybe that's why it's so delayed. Maybe they're producing it for the American audience. Yeah.
Could be. Yeah. And there's other different things too, like at Cinemark, there's I think like cups, tumblers. So, you know, if you're interested in a particular type of Barbie movie merch, definitely, you know, research a little bit beforehand. I don't know what the availability will be, but it's cool that, you know, we can get stuff like that.
I guess here we should really just say if we should recommend it or not, right?
I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah,
I would
same.
say give it a watch. I mean, I think I guess if we're going to give the grade over, you know, right off the bat, it's you gave it like didn't you say like an
A-?
I would agree. Yeah. I would agree. It's a very good, very entertaining movie that is not flawless. We'll get into the conversation. But it's a really fun, joyous romp. And a bit of an emotional roller coaster. Yeah. It's so I don't go into it expecting pure fluff. Yeah. It's definitely, there's some very heavy, you know, themes and conversations. It's a movie that really merits multiple viewings. I should say at this time, we so far have only seen it once, but I'm like, I want to watch it again because there's definitely aspects to it that you feel like you need to watch again to kind of really chew on and process like the different themes. And you know, this movie has sparked a lot of conversation, and I mean, honestly, we could have a 3-hour conversation about this movie. We're going to try to really condense it for this, but it's a movie that, you know, you're going to want to talk about. You're probably going to want to see multiple times. It's a lot of camp, it's a lot of laughs, but it's a lot of heart and emotion and heaviness as well, with a few flaws, but you know, it's a great time, and collectors definitely need to see it. From there, we are going to dive straight into spoilers. So this is your spoiler warning. If you have not seen the movie, click away, come back and join us for this conversation after you have seen the movie. We'll start off really, you know, I think with the core cast, essentially the main two characters, which is basically, you know, Margot Robbie as Barbie and Ryan Gosling as Ken. I think they were both fabulous in these roles. Of course, there were all these like conversations, you know, before the movie came out about what the story was going to be and who was playing Barbie. As many people know, there was one point in time where Amy Schumer was going to be playing Barbie. It's worth noting that the movie had a completely different script and story at that time. At a certain point, it seems like it became kind of like a passion or pet project of Margot's. Like, she took on the story, and then she actually asked Greta Gerwig to direct it. And she was also the one who really wanted Ryan to be Ken. And
I think Margot is one of the producers, right?
Yes, yeah. So she had quite a bit of say over, like, you know, the general direction that the movie went. It's interesting. Margot has played multiple characters at this point, obviously, you know, with like Harley Quinn, where people have these preconceived notions about who the character is, and there's sort of a source material to base off of and whatever. But of course, when it comes to Barbie, as we've said before, Barbie kind of means different things to different people. But it's funny, Margot plays a quote unquote stereotypical Barbie. So she's basically, you know, a gorgeous blonde bombshell, you know, and what's great is the movie definitely pokes fun at that. You know, the movie doesn't shy away from, you know, the problematic aspects of Barbie, negative impact on, you know, body image, and questions like, has Barbie been good for women and all that. The movie addresses all of those things. It doesn't shy away from them. I think in terms of the performances specifically, Margot ventures very well kind of between like the perpetually happy and sunny, like, I'm perfect and I can do everything, you know, Barbie, and the emotional turmoil she kind of experiences, you know, through the rest of the film. I love the fact that the film was so willing to kind of just like poke fun at itself and the brand that it was centered on and everything, where like the scene where Margot was really upset after coming back from the human world, and she was like, you know, I'm not beautiful anymore. And the narrator literally paused and was like, note to the filmmakers, Margot is not the person to cast for if you want to make this point. Like, I loved that moment. I thought it was hilarious. Margot was also definitely just a universally popular and accepted kind of choice, I think, to play that role and embody Barbie. And yet she still very much acknowledges, you know, kind of the stereotypes and biases and unfairness and issues within who Barbie is and what Barbie represents. A lot of people have been talking about Ryan Gosling's Ken, and I think rightfully so. Yeah,
I mean, initially, I think when he was first announced as casting, or when his first images came out, there was conversation that he's too old to play Ken.
Yeah.
Which, you know, everyone has their ideal idea of what Ken should be. After seeing the film, you know, you definitely understand why he was cast as Ken.
We already kind of had that conversation a bit, and, you know, we had a previous podcast where we talked about like with the initial, you know, casting and all that. But I think ultimately it's like, are some people going to envision Ken as a younger character? Yes. Can I think of anyone who would have played this Ken in this role better than Ryan Gosling? No. I think ultimately, if it comes down to the performance, he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
I think he embodied the role perfectly. I think too, we have to keep in mind that for this story and for these characters, I think it was important to choose people with acting chops, rather than just young people who look like Barbie and Ken.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he poured his heart and soul into this.
And I mean, that's what's great. The movie was so camp, and his role had so much camp. I mean, multiple roles did in the film, but he took it so seriously. And I mean, that's what I love about Ryan Gosling in general. Honestly, we can accredit that really to all of his roles. Ryan is a phenomenal actor. He was great in La La Land. He was great in Crazy Stupid Love. And I think those films too, they showed his range. He can do comedy, he can do emotion and all that. And he displays that in Barbie. I have to say, I'm Just Ken, his musical number, was one of my favorite parts of the entire movie.
He does it all. He does, you know, comedy, you know, serious, and he even has a musical number and dancing.
Yeah.
He does it all in this film.
Yeah, and I mean, they didn't need to go that hard for like what was essentially kind of like a gag song, but it was, I mean, It's great. It's like, it's catchy. It had a great sequence. It lives in my head rent free. I listened to the song on its own. It was phenomenal.
And he's getting Oscar buzz for this too.
He is getting Oscar buzz. Yes. You know, kind of addressing as well the people and outlets who have been accusing the Barbie movie of having a quote unquote, you know, anti-man stance or message. What I do have to say, and you know, stay with me through this line of thought. When I was watching the movie and there was that initial, I don't know if I can say it kind of felt like a twist of, you know, Ken discovering patriarchy in the real world and then going back to Barbie Land, and then to some extent the Kens were sort of vilified and they kind of took over Barbie Land. My knee-jerk reaction when it like started going in that direction, I have to admit I was a little apprehensive. I was a little like, oh, okay. I was like, where are they going with this? In part, I think just because, to be honest, I have a complex relationship with like quote unquote surprise villains in media in general. We have, obviously, there's been shows and Marvel movies and things like that where when a character who you're not expecting to kind of be a villain is vilified, it can make you feel a range of emotions. There's that whole sequence where they're kind of like frat broing all of, you know, Barbie Land and kind of tearing it apart, and then, you know, the Barbies become sort of subservient to the Kens. I understand kind of the process and the point that whole sequence was trying to make. I do have to say, just kind of that part, or a portion of that part of the movie, dragged for me personally a little bit, like that kind of long sequence where the Barbies hatched that like plan where they were kind of like pretending to play along or whatever. That sequence, there were bits and pieces of it that for me personally, that it felt a little hokey and just kind of slow.
I like that part.
But yeah, I think there's definitely people who will enjoy that part too.
That would be me.
But I really, really liked the resolution of that whole situation. I think it kind of brought things full circle. I do not believe that the movie ends on a note of like sending a message, all men are horrible and disgusting and Ken is an evil villain. It's like, no, that's not the takeaway. I mean, I think it's very, very important to note there's a scene where Barbie apologizes to Ken. I think that was the perception, is that obviously the entirety of Ken's character was just the kind of like, he's head over heels, like hopelessly in love with Barbie.
I mean, we talked about this a lot in our channels. Like sometimes these toy companies treat male dolls as accessories to their, you know, their flagship girl dolls. And I think this movie plays on that conception a lot. I think,
it was funny that the Mattel CEO said, we're not concerned about Ken. We never have been. And that was fun for collectors.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I think there's a role reversal here where it is, you know, in stereotypical like film fashion or in real life, you know, the girl her agency is just to be a sidekick for the man, or a sexual object for the man. And this role is reversed, where Ken is really obsessed with Barbie and his agency is all about just getting Barbie's attention. And I think by the end of the film, he has his own agency in discovering what he is outside of just Barbie.
Yeah, and I mean, that's how really both of their stories end, is that both Barbie and Ken have the conversation, we need to figure out who we are and what will give us fulfillment in life. And Ken needs to realize that's not just me being Barbie's boyfriend, and Barbie realizes that's not just me being like a perfect pink blonde, you know, and among other things, you know. And I think in that sense, it's more of a universal message that I think anyone can relate to. I mean, obviously, clearly, you know, yes, the movie is very much a celebration of women, of course. Saying, and I cannot speak to the female experience, but I definitely know with a lot of people I have talked to, and I am well aware, of course, that, you know, the intent of a lot of the things that happen in the movie, it's like kind of like a gender role, gender norm reversal. And it is interesting that Barbie Land is almost in a sense a little more like a matriarchal society, and then they go to the real world and Ken discovers patriarchy. and then the male characters like take over basically. I did see another assessment though that's very interesting, is that even in the quote unquote more matriarchal Barbie land, the Kens aren't subservient to the Barbies. They just kind of exist, and they just do beach and do their own thing. They don't really have much like excitement or ambition or purpose in life, and no one knows where they live apparently.
I think like how these toy companies expect boy dolls to be, they're just there to fill out Barbie's world.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, the reality is, of course, how many films have we seen where a woman or a female character is an accessory or a love interest or what's the test?
I don't know.
The something or other test. We're forgetting the name right now, but the test that you take. Does a female character have a conversation with another female character that doesn't involve like men or something like that? Margot Robbie herself played a role in Wolf of Wall Street, where she was pretty much a gorgeous blonde bombshell girlfriend, and I mean, I definitely didn't see a whole lot of people complaining about that. So it's like, and I mean, the movie clearly showcases Ken as well. Ken got so many moments to shine. I mean, Ryan Gosling is the main one, is getting like Oscar buzz. And I mean, just Ryan Gosling from what I've heard, which maybe proves part of the movie's point. But the movie shares a lot in terms of, the female experience, which I know is valid, whether some people want to believe it or not. America Ferrera, who of course she plays the human Gloria, which to a certain extent like the one of the few main human characters in Surrounded by Barbies. She's almost in a sense sort of like a stand-in sometimes for the audience and people watching. Her monologue towards the end with Barbie, where she talks about how, impossible it is to be a woman, and how you're supposed to be thin, but not too thin, and how you're supposed to, work hard, but also take care of the kids and manage all these different things and be all this and all that. I think the movie is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. Even if not all of it is for you personally or for me personally, that's fine. I think it doesn't need to be. I think it means enough to enough people that it is important and it's impactful. I do want to say on kind of the LGBT side of things, and I mean, there's some people, of course, who are claiming the movie has a quote unquote LGBT agenda or whatever, that from what I recall, not a single character in the film is verbally established as LGBT. None. There are LGBT actors participating in the film, but there are no canonically LGBT Barbie characters. Hari Nef is in the film. She plays a Barbie. Hari Nef is a trans person in real life. Her character is not established as trans in the film, but I have seen multiple people say, and I mean, I noticed this when I watched the movie, there's a scene where she's just called beautiful, and where a cisgender movie star heartthrob Ryan Gosling is flirting with her, and it feels like we very seldom see anything like that in mainstream film. So I think it's great to see these different people from different walks of life and within the LGBT community having roles in these films. There's a part of me that kind of wishes there was at least one character established as LGBT in the film. Alan was right there. And I have to say Alan was another aspect. I'm kind of I feel like they didn't really do anything with him. He was, I honestly, based on the teasers and there are aspects of both Ken and Alan and certain things within the Barbie world that it feels like are gay LGBT coded, but it's not really ever made canon. The whole fact that Alan is quote unquote Ken's buddy and things like that. And there was a scene in the trailers where during the beach off, or I'll beach you off, all that, where when they're saying that, the camera cuts to Alan. And so I was expecting his character to potentially be LGBT. That was not established. He kind of just had like a random role. He helped the Barbies.
I think
towards the end.
maybe, second viewing might, shed more light on it. But
Yeah.
He definitely became a Barbie fixture by the end of it. He's dancing with the Barbies. He's helping the Barbies out. I think that's maybe a good indication of his character and with his role. I thought he was a fun addition to the movie. I think,
On that note, there's a lot of Easter eggs for collectors. I mean, Alan was, a since discontinued doll, and there's a lot of like legacy, discontinued, and controversial and problematic Barbie releases. Like, pregnant Midge is in the film, and they even had Sugar Daddy Ken or Sugar Daddy, which is based on a real doll.
It was not released. It was a prototype that they were gonna release, but
they never released it?
Nope.
Okay, well, I thought the whole thing too is there was a play that he was called Sugar Daddy because his dog was named Sugar.
Yes,
so he's Sugar's daddy.
Yes,
yeah.
He was never actually produced.
Okay.
So IT actually produced a version of him.
Hey guys, so this is Max in editing jumping in to expand on this interesting situation. Several news articles across the internet claim that Sugar Daddy Ken was released in 2009 as a quote anniversary collector doll, but we were unable to find an official Mattel confirmed source of this. We were also unable to find any listings of him online or even images of what his box would have looked like. And as Sang said, many doll collectors in the community have stated firsthand they believed the doll was never officially released. There is an Entertainment Earth listing of him, which does declare the doll as canceled. Kind of wild, so many publications got this wrong if that's the case, but either way, this is quite a deep cut for collectors to include in the movie. I'm sure there's some people who might want to write off and say like, oh, well, the movie's just like a marketing vehicle for Mattel or whatever. And I mean, in many ways, you could argue that it is. I mean, people are clearly, buying the dolls. They released a whole bunch of products, but this film did not shy away from making fun of Mattel. It was very much, they were very aggressive about, again, addressing the problematic aspects of Barbie. The Mattel CEO is portrayed as this like maniacal, cartoony man, who's very power and money hungry. I think the movie does enough to kind of transcend that. It's not, you definitely don't feel like I'm just watching a giant ad. Like, that was definitely, I didn't really get that feeling. In addition to Mattel being willing to poke fun at itself, WB, Warner Brothers, which is, the company behind producing the movie, pokes fun at itself as well. I loved the Snyder Cut joke. It was so funny. In terms of some of the other Barbies and Kens as well, some of the other characters, they advertised so many of these people before the film, but some of them barely appeared in the film and had kind of small roles. Issa Rae as President Barbie was fabulous. I loved her. I wish we saw a little more of her. She was really great.
Sequel.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen more of her.
Yeah.
I love the one scene with her where Hari Neff's Barbie was it's like, oh my gosh, the president is here, and she's like, I am, you're welcome. I loved that, the delivery of that. We were big fans of My Mad Fat Diary, so it was really cool to see Sharon Rooney in this film. She was very good as well. Again, we didn't really necessarily see a ton of her. Simu Liu was also, he was kind of like another Ken. He was sort of like secondary Ken in a sense. And I think he did a great job. I really enjoyed Simu. He didn't get as many opportunities to shine as Ryan Gosling's Ken, but he was part of the I'm Just Ken sequence, and he's a really good dancer. So he did great during the dance sequences. So he was a lot of fun. I think in terms of, the emotion of the movie, a lot of people are talking about the scenes with Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie. Their portrayal of Ruth you know, I think really helped give the film an emotional core and kind of the explanation of what Barbie was supposed to represent and kind of what she's supposed to mean to people and to young girls. You know, and the fact Ruth named Barbie after her daughter Barbara. Ruth kind of represented Barbie's connection to the real world and kind of seeing, quote unquote, the complexity and the appeal of being human, you know, versus just like being a doll. It was pretty gutsy of them to address her tax evasion controversies. So again, this movie was not afraid to like get its hands dirty and, you know, address all the problems and controversies and negatives of Mattel and the Barbie brand and everything, including its creator. The other thing that we have to bring up that was awesome for doll collectors is the subtle yet not so subtle Bratz reference in the film, where Barbie goes up to a group of racially diverse four friends who don't like Barbie and and that's also it was kind of perfect that like the monologue about like all the harm Barbie has done was delivered by one of them. And her name is Sasha, which is also, you know, she's Gloria's daughter. And Sasha is also, of course, the name of one of the Bratz characters. So people clocked that as like, oh my gosh, there's like a Bratz reference in the film. There's so much more we could say, and I'm sure our thoughts and opinions on this will expand with, you know, multiple viewings. And like I said, I do really want to watch it again. I think that makes for great cinema. I think if you want to see it again and you want to talk about it and you want to kind of like sink your teeth into it, even if there's like little aspects you feel like you might take issue with or whatever, it has all those components, then I think that makes for great cinema. I think that, you know, that's a good movie right there.
Yeah, and I think a movie doesn't have to be made for you specifically to be able to enjoy it. I think the Barbie movie does accomplish that, where it is an entertaining film, if not necessary. The themes or messages relate to you, but it can still resonate, and it's a very important conversation, and you know, certain, you know, demographics can be seen and appreciated. I think Mattel's theme of diversity really shows through the film. And I would love to see a sequel, and, you know, if there is another story worth telling. Just to mention really quickly that, you know, Mattel is considering a Mattel Cinematic Universe, which is going to be a very interesting conversation we could have if you guys are interested in hearing our thoughts on a potential different MCU.
The whole Mattel Cinematic Universe thing is, let us know if you want us to have a whole other conversation about that, because we've heard there's like a Polly Pocket movie is confirmed, directed by Lena Dunham, and they want to make movies about Hot Wheels and all this other stuff. I don't, you know, that's a whole other conversation. But
but overall, I think our final thoughts is, definitely this is a movie worth seeing. Hopefully at this point in our conversation, if you have seen the film, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you going to see it again? Are you going to buy it on DVD? I think Mattel has a great opportunity to release some really cool collector's edition Blu-ray collectibles.
For sure. The Barbie movie was a great time. I am definitely glad it exists. I think it's going to speak to a lot of people, and clearly, you know, plenty of people are enjoying it. It has a great Rotten Tomatoes average, and it's making a whole bunch of money. So the reception has clearly been positive. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. Very, very curious what you all think. I know, again, there's just so many moving parts and so many components here. There's so much to talk about. There's more I'm sure we could say, but we got to wrap this up. Let us know what you'd like us to discuss next. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.